The Tour du Mont Blanc is one of the most iconic mountain routes in the world. It's about 170 kilometers long, crossing through France, Italy, and Switzerland while circling the tallest peak in Western Europe, as seen on this custom-designed shirt, linked to that below. It's a route that attracts hikers from all over the world, and increasingly runners as well. And we've done the route a handful of times now, fast packing it while relying on the huts. But one of the things that makes the Tour du Mont Blanc so special is that there isn't just one way to experience it. You can do it fast or slow, independently or fully supported, in total comfort or with complete self-sufficiency. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 5 ways that you can hike or run the TMB, along with the pros and cons of each, to help you decide what fits your goals, your budget, and your tolerance for logistics. And this video was sponsored by Vagabond Trails, the operator that we keep going back to for groups on the TMB and elsewhere because we trust them so much. And I'll tell you more about them towards the end. So let's start with the most self-sufficient option, and that's doing the route on your own, tenting at designated campsites. Now you can tent on the Tour du Mont Blanc, but wild camping is generally not allowed along most of the route. So instead, you'll stay in official campgrounds in towns or in small camping areas near certain refuges. Now there is a high alpine bivouac exception where you can technically set up at dusk and pack up at dawn in emergencies, but for most people, planning around official sites is the realistic and the most legal way to do it. Now the biggest advantage of this option is cost. It's by far the cheapest way to complete the TMB, and it gives you the most flexibility to start last minute when the huts are already fully booked. But your pack, of course, will be much heavier because you're carrying your tent, sleeping gear, and possibly even a stove and food, unless you're gonna split the difference and buy your meals. You're also tied to specific towns or refuges for camping, so you don't gain that much day-to-day freedom once you're on the trail, unlike wild camping where traditionally it's less controlled. And weather also becomes a bigger factor in both safety and comfort, and it could end up being an even bigger investment if you don't own all of the required gear already. But this is a great option if you're on a budget, and if you do already own most of the gear. You're only looking at around 10 to maybe 25 euros for a site with facilities like showers and Wi-Fi, plus the cost of your food. Now option 2 is to do it on your own, but hut to hut, with everything self-booked. And this is the classic way to experience the Tour du Mont Blanc. You move between mountain refuges, small inns, and village hotels, and your pack will be much lighter since you're not carrying camping gear. So the advantages here are comfort and better recovery. You get hot meals and warm beds, and that lighter pack makes the long days much easier, especially if you're running. Although it's still up to you to make sure that you're not carrying too much weight, which in our case has meant wearing the same clothes each day on the trail and avoiding carrying pretty much any luxuries at all, aside from some camera gear. The social aspect in the huts is a big part of the experience, but flexibility is the major trade-off here, because during peak season, some huts book out up to a year in advance. So last-minute planning becomes difficult. And once your reservations are locked in, your daily start and finish points are essentially fixed. So changing plans due to weather or fatigue can be complicated. So it's much more comfortable than tenting, but less flexible once the trip begins. Plan to budget up to 100 euros per person per day, including half board, which is your dinner and breakfast at the hut, plus the cost of lunch or any snacks that you might buy at refuges or in the towns that you pass through during the day. Option 3 is doing the route on your own, hut to hut, but with bag transfers. Now this is a popular approach for both runners and hikers who want to travel as light as possible. You'll still need to plan your route and book your accommodations, but a transfer service moves your main bag ahead each day. You only carry what you actually need on the trail for that day. And especially for runners, moving with a small running pack lets you cover way more ground with less fatigue, making the route feel more like a multi-day staged run than a traditional trek. And you still end each day with clean clothes, recovery tools, and all the comforts that you left in your main bag. Now the downside is cost and structure. Luggage transfer is not cheap. You're likely looking at least a few hundred euros for the full trip, on top of the cost of the huts. So depending on how many days you plan on spending on the trail, your costs could be approaching 1,000 euros per person. And since bag delivery is limited to specific towns, you're more restricted in where you can end each day. And if weather or fatigue fatigue forces a change in your itinerary, adjusting everything becomes even more difficult. So you're trading pack weight for price and flexibility for comfort and speed. Although again, as you'll see in our original film about the Tour du Mont Blanc, where we fast-packed hut to hut, you can run the route with a very small pack without bag transfers, as long as you're disciplined and smart in what you pack. Option 4 is a fully booked but self-guided trip, and this sits somewhere between full DIY and a fully guided experience. You still hike or run on your own each day, but a company like our partner Vagabond Trails arranges your lodging, your stage breakdown, and optionally your meals and even bag transfers. Your itinerary and GPX files arrive ready to go. The biggest benefit here is removing the planning stress. You don't have to worry about booking huts across 3 countries, languages, and currencies. In fact, every year we hear from frustrated hikers and runners who try to DIY their trip. And after spending time on spreadsheets and waiting for huts to reply, only to find out that they were full, they've ended up with an itinerary that kind of felt forced because what they originally wanted was no longer available. You'll still move independently at your own pace while on the trail, but the logistics are done for you. The downside is again reduced flexibility once the itinerary is set, and of course it's more expensive than planning everything yourself. And while you get some support, you're still responsible for your own safety. There's also no built-in social components like on a guided group trip, but I think it's a great option for couples especially, or for small groups who want independence but with the peace of mind that everything's locked in properly. Now, having said that, a quick word about safety. The TMB is a well-established and very well-marked route, but it passes through high alpine terrain where weather can be unpredictable, even in summer. Poor visibility, sudden storms, and exposure can make navigation challenging, and without solid mountain experience, small mistakes can escalate quickly, especially when hiking solo. So if you're unsure about your abilities, I would definitely go for option 5, which is a fully guided group trip. This is the most structured and often the most relaxing way to experience the TMB. All lodging, logistics, route planning, safety, and decision-making are handled for you. Your only job is to show up and move your body. Since you'll be accompanied by a certified guide, or often 2, this is also the safest option if you're not entirely comfortable solo in the mountains. You're typically picked up at the Geneva airport and then dropped off a week or so later, and everything in between is taken care of. It removes all of the mental load and lets you focus entirely on the experience. Another big benefit is the guides themselves. They're incredibly knowledgeable about everything from the history of the trail to the local geology and the flora and fauna that you'll encounter along the way. They add a layer of context and storytelling that you simply don't get when you're on your own. But the camaraderie is also a huge highlight. You'll share the journey with a group of like-minded people, and that shared experience creates memories that you rarely get when traveling alone. We still hear from people years later from our trips saying that it was one of the best weeks of their lives. And when it's a trip that we're hosting, you even get to star in a commemorative video of the experience. But with any guided trip, you're sure to come home with some really fun group photos. Now, the only downside is, of course, cost. This is by far the most expensive option. Your pace is also tied to the group, and you sacrifice a bit of solitude and that personal decision-making you'd otherwise have in exchange for support and simplicity. But for runners, this option feels a lot like that running vacation that I mentioned, and it can make for a great week of training if you've got a big race coming up, like I often do. And when we host guided running trips on the Tour du Mont Blanc, we always partner with Vagabond Trails. We've worked with them a few times now for running and hiking trips on the TMB, in addition to the Dolomites, Ecuador, and most recently on a trip to Peru. Even if you're not joining one of our trips specifically, they're an excellent option for hikers or runners who want a fully guided experience with small groups and all logistics handled from start to finish. And they also offer, as I said, that fully booked but self-guided option as well, where they'll handle the planning and booking with or without bag transfers, but you're on your own during the trip. So which option is right for you? Well, if you want the cheapest and most independent version, tenting at designated sites might be the best fit. If you want tradition and comfort, hut to hut is the classic choice. If you want to move fast and light, then bag transfers are hard to beat. And if you want independence but without the planning, a self-guided package from Vagabond Trails could be the smartest middle ground. And if you want the easiest and most social experience, then a fully guided trip is the clear winner. There's no single right way to experience the Tour du Mont Blanc. The best option is the one that lines up with your goals, your budget, and how much planning that you're willing to take on. If you have any questions, I'd recommend reaching out to the team at Vagabond Trails directly. I'll link to their website below. And if you want to see more about what the experience actually looks like, you can watch the films that I made about the Tour du Mont Blanc, which we first did independently here, and later with the group here as well.